Welcome back to SEO On Air. I'm your host, Aaron, and today we have Alexandra Watson, Chief Marketing Officer at GTMA, with us. We talk about local SEO and the different tools that can help you, reputation marketing, and how AI is still changing the game. I hope you enjoy this episode.
GTMA is small, but has been very supportive. So when I joined the organization in 2019, I was the first woman in their executive leadership team, and I still am. Of the four of us, there's just me as a female executive leader. But in my tenure there, we have promoted many female managers, and I think we are now more female led than have ever been. So that's in part because of the hiring and mentorship that I have done, but they have been extremely supportive, and we are very diverse for a small company, not just in terms of gender, but in terms of race and ethnicity and beliefs, and I think that that's an important thing because the diversity really helps us to see different perspectives and understand more consumers and bring more to the table when we all kind of bring those differences together.
And it's clearly working for you guys because at GTMA, there's quite a I wouldn't say disruption, but there's a lot of uniqueness happening there that you wouldn't normally find in a lot of other agencies. One of the things that I kind of found out while comparing, let's say, agencies between ours and yours, and just in general, what are people doing in the digital marketing sphere? I realized that the organic social kind of strategy that you guys use in terms of even creating videos are a lot better than what I've been seeing in other places as well. And I can't really say it's a testament to either the leadership or to the actual people putting in the effort. But how does GTMA kind of put that foot through the door and kind of lead the innovation and initiative process?
That's an interesting question. I think part of that has to do with the fact that our chief creative officer comes from the Hollywood film industry. And so even in creating the company back, 12 years ago, he brought that kind of filmmaking perspective to the production that they were doing. And their first project was just a luxury apartment building in Hollywood, trying to help lease this luxury building. And he came at it with a perspective of creating a story like you would a Hollywood film. And so that really brings a unique perspective at a time that was 12 years ago when no one was really even considering doing apartment marketing that way, and people didn't even do virtual tours or online tours at the time, and they brought this kind of cinematic perspective to how they filmed the building and the space that was available and all of its amenities. And so that's carried over throughout all of the projects and different client work that we do. We have that kind of cinematic perspective to it, and we try to approach every project as storytellers. And I think that's really what is a distinctive difference for our company.
Back to GTMA. I think since you mentioned the video production part of it, there are other, let's say, top services provided by GTMA. So would you be able to, let's say, point out one of them that you feel very inclined with and one you're really proud about?
Yeah. Really, beside the creative production, our kind of sister service that we offer that really was the beginning of how the agency made its mark, I think, and came into the marketplace was our organic social media. And I'm in charge of that team. I'm very proud of the work that they do, and we really position every client as a hyper local expert in their field, and we work really extensively with trying to have high quality content and working with local business partners to also elevate them so that it's not just salesy where it's all about your business all the time, because that doesn't work so well in social media. People want you to be authentic, but also be valuable, be helpful, to them. And that isn't just talking about yourself all the time. And so we try to really elevate local partnerships as well. And I think that's a unique way of approaching it with social media that really just is more authentic ultimately for the people that are looking at your content. So I'm very proud of that service. And then honestly, the other thing I would say is our SEO team, that I've really done a lot to build that team and the services and the packages that we offer in SEO. And even for the company itself to understand how vital that is when we're doing web design. And now we do internal web development, that SEO needs to not be an afterthought, but really be integrated into the entire process. And that's, I think, a very important thing as well, because sadly, when you have a creative agency that's doing a web design, even today in 2023, a lot of them will put the design first and think of the SEO later.
Right.
And they're just coming from a creative perspective. And so it's really important to get that analytical, technical perspective in there as well, and think about the functionality and think about how it could be optimized. And I'm proud of the SEO work that we've done in that realm.
Okay, I think since you kind of mentioned it, having SEO done before web design and development, I was wondering if I could play a little, I wouldn't really say a role play, but more of like an example type thing, where I kind of give you just a situation and you kind of give me either GTMA's version of it or your version of a solution.
Okay.
So I want to create a website and I want to have a nice web design and developed site that can, we'll get to the what I'm offering later on. But you mentioned the fact that I need to at least think of the SEO part of it earlier. So if, let's say I am targeting customers and clients within my area, I think local SEO would be the first thing that I would come across my mind. So what would be your tips and tricks to create a proper local SEO strategy for me? You can ask me questions to at least figure out what kind of hypothetical business I have, but like that's the initial starter you have.
Yeah. So the local SEO, but in terms of how that's part of the web design and development itself, I think having a map page is extremely important, where you can pinpoint local places of interest, give the users a context of landmarks that you're around, ways that they might find you in your local area. So we usually do a customized map with points of interest on that. Also, just making sure in the copywriting itself that you have a lot of variations in the keywords with your location modifiers, so that you can really have a chance to succeed in local ranking, because it's so important to say, not just, for instance, let's say you have plumbing services, but not just to talk about plumbing in general, but to say you have services in certain zip codes, or what area you're serving, but to mention those specifically in the copywriting is extremely important. And then we also try to develop, depending on the footprint that the business has, develop sectional kind of landing pages as well. So do you need a regional landing page, or do you need one, if you have franchise locations, are you going to need a subdomain or sub pages for each of those locations in order to really give them a chance to come forward in ranking in their own particular market? So depending on if you've got a single location or multiple ones, or if you have multiple service areas, that's important to consider as well, so that you're giving each of them a chance to be highlighted and to rank individually.
Okay, so I think for now I have a single area that I'm pretty much servicing only that area. I'm doing plumbing services. I think that's a good example we can just throw in there. But now I think it might be a bit, I wouldn't say complicated, but it might be a bit twisted here now. So if I am doing plumbing services, how important would, let's say, reputation and influencer marketing help me out?
Well, it's extremely important, because I think it's good to remember that from the consumer perspective, they trust peer feedback much more than they do even expert sources, and trust studies show that over and over again, that peers are seen as more authentic in their feedback. And that doesn't mean that you need to have a 5-star rating. Actually, it's a little bit more believable if you have a 4-star rating and you have some bad reviews in there, because as well, because it shows people what your customer service is like, and it gives more credibility than just having a perfect record. It makes you more authentic. But that's extremely important when you're a local business. People want to know how others experienced your services, and if you had an issue, how was the customer service handled? Were you on time? And was there a problem with the invoicing? Did you offer promotions or specials, or just getting all of that information from their peers it can be very helpful to your business. And really build your authority and trustworthiness, which are important local ranking factors. And so I think incorporating testimonials or a review feed into your site can also be a way of strengthening that local ranking as well. So people don't have to hop in multiple places online to see what the business experience will be like, but they can see that all in one place and have some kind of confirmation that they're making a good decision in choosing your business.
So I now have a good couple of reviews. I think I'm at 4.5, let's say. Some of them have been bad. It's kind of like a quick question. Some of the bad reviews that I have, I'm not really responding to it because I feel like, why should I give in to the, let's say, hate online? Would you advise against it, and why?
I would actually advise that you do respond and that you respond to all reviews. But you also do that in a way where you encourage a negative reviewer to take that offline and to contact your customer service or to reach out to you directly offline so that you can find a resolution. But it's still important to answer because you're not just answering that person that left the review, you're answering in a public space where other people are looking to see how you'll handle the situation, and it's an indication of your customer service and also your business operations, for them to see that you've paid attention, that you're aware of it, and that you're trying to resolve it. So stay neutral. Don't start an online war by any means, but encourage them to contact you offline and let everyone else that's maybe looking in on that, let them know that you are trying to find a resolution and that you actually care, that that somebody has taken the time to leave that feedback. And in terms of local ranking anyway, it's not just your star rating that makes a difference. It's also your response time and the percentage that you respond to. So all of those things will actually help to lift your ranking.
So, kind of ask you, are there any, let's say, tools that can help make this process a whole lot easier for people who might not be too sure how to use or how to at least respond sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. And I think especially if you're a small business, it's a good idea to kind of use a multi-purpose tool that can help you with this, so that you don't have to become an expert in reputation management or in local SEO, but take advantage of the tools that are available and of agency help, if that's part of your marketing budget, to do that as well. Um, I've used multiple different platforms in the past, but there are many of them that include both reputation management services and some factors in local SEO in the same platform. So you get a comprehensive view of how you're doing in listings and reputation. So there are many of them like that. I right now we're as an agency we use review trackers, but there are reputation .com itself, is a kind of bigger platform. Bird's Eye. There are I'm blinking on one other that I used prior to review trackers. But there are many of them like that. Even Moz Local and other SEM tools, SEO tools include some reputation management in them now. A lot of them have crossover. So I'd say, especially if you're a small business, look for a multi-purpose tool that gives you a good comprehensive overview of how your business is performing and where your business is listed. And then if you have multiple locations or a more complex business model, then definitely bring in a partner who can be a specialist for you in that, so that you don't have to do that, because in those situations especially, you have a business to run and you may not have the time that it takes to respond to the volume of reviews that you have. So if it's outside of your scope that you can possibly get to on a consistent basis, then you need to have a partner that will come alongside you and help you with that, so that those reviews don't go unanswered.
And when you are kind of like finalizing a partner, what are some of the things you look for in finding that partner? Because I'm not sure if it's as easy as like, just pulling one out of the barrel.
Right. I think it's really important to have a good conversation leading in. So make sure that you are vetting um, their reviews, their other customer experiences, how long they've been in business, those basics, so that you have confidence, but then also have a good conversation of what are your expectations, where does their task and responsibility end, and yours begin, so that you understand how you'll be working together to accomplish your business goals. Have a sorry have a deep understanding also of what your business goals are and what you are going to be tracking, so that you're both on the same page in terms of KPIs and any reporting that you're going to receive. And then I think also have a crisis kind of plan. So if things go wrong, if they need to escalate some issue for support, how is that going to happen? And what's the process that you want to put in place if if you have a negative situation occur? Think of that ahead of time and make sure that you're on the in agreement on how that's going to happen, so that you're prepared before you have a crisis and everybody is scrambling.
And while you're prepared and you kind of get the partner agency also kind of prepared on what your expectations are, what would you say are some red flags that they might do as an agency that'll give you the sign of, hey, listen, this is where I need to cut it off?
I think the biggest one is just a lack of communication. If you have trouble getting a timely response from them, then that's a big red
Major red
flag.
flag.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. They should be, even if they're unsure of the answer or need time to investigate. They should tell you up front. We've received this. We're working on it, and give you frequent updates. But if you feel like you're not getting the attention, or they're not even acknowledging the communication, that's a big red flag. And then I think also, if they are not aligned on your KPIs, or they're not giving you the answers that you were asking for initially, in terms of what are the metrics, how are things going, where are the reports, things like that, then you need to have that follow through and accountability. So that's another red flag, if they're not providing reporting, or if they're not able to explain the metrics to you, or give you the metrics that you had initially asked for.
So I was wondering if you could give like a little bit of a shift in dynamic, how things were back in the day and how things are now.
Yeah, I was marketing on Facebook before they had business pages, actually. So, I mean, they rolled out in 2007 initially, and then became really public in 2009. I think I started marketing on Facebook in 2010. And so businesses had to be personal profiles at the time. It was a really odd thing trying to fit it into a personal platform and try to figure out how to do business, and what content people expected on Facebook. It's really transformed, and now, of course, they acquired Instagram along the way, and it became much more image and video centric over time. It started out with just little, text updates that you would give your friends and family and high school acquaintances and everything. That it was just about, short text, and very quickly photos and then video have really overtaken those platforms and been the central way that we communicate. I think also in the process, it's been interesting to see how the captions and texts themselves have changed. We used to have much shorter hits of information, and now I think a lot of influencers have pushed this, where it's okay to have a much longer caption, in especially in Instagram. That's more acceptable now than it used to be. We used to do like a little one line, maybe two line caption, and now that has expanded. At the same time, though, it's much more video centric, and everything is moved to stories, instead of the news feed. So there have been a lot of changes along the way. And then, of course, there's always the new trending shiny object, whether that was Snapchat or Vine, and
And
now
now TikTok.
TikTok.
What are your thoughts on AI taking that role and helping out?
I
I
think
was going to
it's
actually ask quite a few questions with AI, so I'm just hoping you're prepared for that.
yeah, I think we're at a really interesting point in time with AI, because um, it can do many things. And I think AI is already, kind of hidden in the background in a lot of things that we do. It really started years ago with, assistive technologies like Siri and Alexa, and those, kind of coming in and doing voice search and things that, we embraced, but didn't really realize how that would snowball into the AI that we currently have. But it's a really interesting place to be in marketing right now. I think a lot of the AI, I know there's a lot of buzz, around Chat GPT in particular, but I think it's important for us to realize the limitations that it has, and that in particular, as like a large database model AI, is amazing what it can do, but it's derivative. It's not creative. And I keep saying that phrase to the people in my own agency where I remind them it's derivative, not creative. So use it accordingly. It's like embrace it. It can really help us to brainstorm. It can help us ideate. It can help us refine our ideas if we explore, asking it questions and trying to kind of distill down which direction we should go, or even condensing down our words to say, here is our idea. We need this in a certain character count. And it can help you ideate that way. But anything that it kind of spits back to you is not going to be a new original creative work. It's just a synthesis of all of the information it already had. So it's going to kind of give you the average response of what it knows. And that's not going to be unique or creative necessarily. And so I think we can really use AI in a lot of ways to assist us, but ultimately it takes a person to have a creative idea or to put a creative spin on how it's presented. And so it can help us streamline tasks. It can, again, help us ideate or fit into certain parameters that we're looking for. But you have to have the original thought. You have to bring the creativity to the equation. So that's important to remember.
Yeah, and I think if everyone is also using AI in some way, shape, or form, you don't really count as someone disrupting the field if everyone is also joining in as well. But let's say in terms of, since we talked about reputation marketing tools, in terms of, let's say, replying to some bad reviews or trying to keep up with some um, consistent information across different channels, would, again, tools like AI be, or ChatGPT specifically, would that be a good insert for it? Again, keeping in mind that we are having that human interaction all the time.
Yeah, it's a great way, I think, to again kind of brainstorm or come up with a list of responses. AI can help you generate those, and there are a lot of tools like review trackers being one that are reputation tools that have automations within the platform itself, so you can build your own set of standard responses and give it the parameters. So we use that in a way where we say, if we have a star rating with no comments, they only gave you a star rating, we have a set of responses it can rotate through so that it's not, doing just one answer every time, but it can rotate through those responses and post one. If also you say, we have a 4 or 5 star review, we can do a standard, thank you kind of response. And we've built in a lot of different responses for different situations, and we just train the AI on when to apply those, and it can, and then it leaves us to do the ones that are more complex or that are maybe a 3 star and they kind of complimented us but also complained in the same review, and we can handle those personally then and leave the others to the automation.
And does the same apply for, let's say, social media activities, where if you wanted to put up a regular post announcing your a new video has been uploaded, can we still also just go back to AI, put in what your inputs are, do a little bit review, and then upload it and go scot free?
Yeah, absolutely. For anything that you evergreen kind of content or announcements, anything that can be pre-scheduled, that's a perfect use of training the AI to make those announcements for you, or to do things on a certain schedule. Anything that can be streamlined like that, and then again, your personal staff should be doing the things that are spur of the moment, or really take more originality of thought, and leave the repetitive tasks or the things that can be pre-scheduled to the AI. Even using chatbots in your social media or on your website is, again, another form of AI.
What are some things that you would say ChatGPT and other AI tools are just not cut out for? or you've used it and you've noticed that this is not the right use for it. To give you a small example, we tried to do keyword research and we found out it was terrible. we
Yes.
we
And
knew that.
I've heard a
Sorry.
lot of examples of that with people trying to get it to do coding as well, where it will give you code, but it doesn't work.
Right.
So you really have to do a lot of auditing and quality control. I think don't expect it to do something that you don't know how to do yourself, because you won't
Right.
have a good judgment on whether it's done it well or
It's
not.
worked. Right.
You know, you need to be able to audit the work that it does, for one. And then I think the other thing that it can't do well, again, is the creativity. I saw a example on LinkedIn recently that I thought was just brilliant, because someone had a photo of a new Marilyn Monroe postage stamp, and they asked AI to come up with a creative tagline for it. And it was very dry and matter of fact. This new Marilyn Monroe postage stamp will premiere at this time. It just took the data that it was given, but it couldn't create a
Couldn't give the
unique, and
emotion.
yeah, it couldn't give you an emotional kind of tagline or even a sense of humor in the tagline.
Right.
And ultimately, the copywriter in that situation, their tagline was, "You're supposed to lick the back." Because it was postage stamp of Marilyn Monroe. And honestly, we all know now most of those stamps are self-adhesive. You don't even have to lick it. But
Yeah.
there's a joke within that AI would not be able to
Right.
get. It wouldn't know to create the line, and it wouldn't get the humor involved in it. And so we have to recognize again that the creativity and the humor is a human thing that we really can't train it to do. But even in those complex tasks, like you had said, back to keyword research or coding, it only knows the average of what it has been input into it. So it may not be giving you correct information, and you need to know how to audit the work to make sure that it actually will function.
Yeah, and I think the information is limited to 2021 or September 2021, I think it is.
Right. Yeah. And and the data model itself, is limited, not even in just the amount of information that was put into it, but also they put parameters around that information. So I know there's a lot of conversation around that too, where if you ask like ethical questions, it will respond using the parameters it was given, but
Right.
which may say, for instance, um, it may respond if you're saying something about animals in advertising, or animals just in general. It may actually respond back to you and say animals are living beings that have a soul and shouldn't be a part of the what you're asking for. It has some
Right.
ethics built into it based on the parameters that were put in. And so you have to realize that too, that it has a bias based on who
Right.
programmed it, and it also has a limit in its information.
What do you feel about the ethics of using AI for your business needs and digital marketing SEO needs? Do you feel like we are somehow tricking Google in a way, or if it's fine to trick Google? Or is it even considered tricking Google by using AI?
I think we have to remember that even like Google and the other search engines also have their own AI built in.
Right.
So in a lot of ways, they can detect, and there are many cases where they've shown they can detect what is AI written content and what is human content. So yeah, so we really can't trick them. That's one AI trying to trick another. I think.
Right. Right.
Um, and and in terms of the ethics of using them, I think it kind of goes back again to their own limitations. So it's ethical, I think, to use them for as they're intended, to assist and to help streamline or help automate. But to try to pass them off as human work is, I think, where we cross the line. They're not intended for that. That's not really what they're best at.
Right.
And it's really not ethical to like just have AI do the work for you and pass it off as your own, because that's just plagiarizing work.
But is it plagiarism if it's a original created content from inputs that I put?
It's still going to be derivative of all of the data that it
Right.
had available. So it didn't give you a unique creation. Really, it gave you
Right.
an average of what it knew.
Right. So to kind of give an example here, if I am doing my plumbing website and now I'm coming up with an article of 5 reasons why you should hire plumbing services,
Mhm.
and the entire article, at least 80% of it, I've created through ChatGPT. I've had my interactions with it where I can put in like a few keywords and link a few times, but like majority of the heavy duty work has been done through ChatGPT or another AI tool.
Mhm.
Um, would you say it's necessary for me to put somewhere in the article this was developed by AI? Because if the article does rank, is it necessary to say that, or is it just it's okay?
That's an interesting question. Um, I would say if it did more than half of the work, then it probably should be cited as a source. I mean, it even if
Okay,
or if you did something that was even you allowed it to do a direct quotation, for you of something, because that's how we would handle a work from a colleague or even a competitor. You wouldn't take you wouldn't take a full paragraph even of their content and just say, well, I'm just going to duplicate that
just copy it. Yeah,
yeah, without giving reference to them.
right,
So I think honestly that's a very gray area right now, and there's no regulation around that. But I think as a best practice, I would err on the side of saying that this was a AI assisted at the least,
right.
um, just in terms of being upfront with. And
Yeah,
I again think it's the best use of it is to outline that for you or help you ideate, but not use something that was entirely AI generated without putting your own touches on it. But
right,
yeah, that'll be interesting to see how marketers handle that in the future, and business owners as well. Um, Whether or not even in saying is it AI assisted or AI generated, which AI,
right,
because they each may have their own restrictions and limitations, and in the future that may make a difference in terms of referencing prior content. So
right,
I would say it's a best practice to be as transparent as you can so that it doesn't come to back to bite you in the future.
right. I was going to actually say that transparency has been, I think, one of the main topics we've always talked about in all our podcasts. How if you don't have that transparency with your client or your employees or just in general your audience, you're not really going to work out that well.
Mhm.
But to kind of tie a bow on the AI topic, because I do know that I'm going to keep on chatting about it, I'm very interested in AI and just curious about what's going on. But to kind of tie a bow, where do you see AI going in the next 5 years? Is it going to be more of assistant, or do you think it might actually start replacing people?
Hmm.
Not Skynet level, but you know what I mean.
Hopefully not. Hopefully it
Okay.
doesn't create an apocalypse.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is going to continue to evolve. I mean, look at manufacturing and the whole industrialization process that happened, 100 years ago. I think at the time people would have said, okay, this equipment or this, manufacturing system is good, but it can never be replaced. And yet a lot of that has been automated and replaced. It just means that we have to learn to adapt and shift with it. It will continue to evolve, and we need to embrace that and say, okay, again, what value can we bring to this equation? If it takes over the repetitive tasks or it takes over things that can be streamlined or, provide basic information, that's fine, because that really shouldn't be the bring the most value anyway.
Right.
So we need to go back to the things that we can do best that can't be replaced, and if anything, um, embrace it first, master it first, so that you can be an expert in the new AI and the new technology, and understand what you bring to the table alongside of it.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, that reminds me of the movie Hidden Figures, if you've seen that, about the early days of NASA, when there were um, women that mathematicians that would do the work that the computers now do at NASA
Right.
before the supercomputers came on board. And they saw that coming. They saw that IBM supercomputer was going to be installed. And so what they did is they learned how to program it. They learned how to code before it came along, so that when it was introduced and it was going to be doing all of the heavy equations and calculations that they had previously done by hand, they knew how to run the equipment and how to program it. So they just learned to shift alongside that technology and not be out of a job.
So I think in terms of how things were and how things are, that human requirement or that human interaction is still going to be there. Like, I don't think there'll be a moment where you don't really need to input something to the AI and it will give you the solution you need. You still need to input what you require from that AI.
Right. Or take that data that it gave you and then do the next thing in the process. It's like there still needs to be some point of transfer of knowledge or application of it that the computer can't do on its own.
And regardless of how much information they have in their database, it doesn't really match up to the amount of experience you personally have and how you've dealt with different situations. What are 3, let's say, books that you would recommend our listeners and viewers? They don't have to be digital marketing or business oriented. They can also just be personal books that you want.
Okay. That's a good question. I read a lot. I actually had originally set a goal for myself for this year. I thought, it would be kind of fun if I read 23 books in 2023. And I read 23 books in the first 3 months of the year. So I was like, I need to up that goal because I really like to read. But in terms of marketing, I'm looking up at my bookshelf. I think one of the best books that I read that was actually written quite a long time ago is called The One-to-One Future. I'm trying to see the Rogers, Peppers and Rogers are the authors of that. But it really talked about that transition between thinking of marketing and commercials and even signage as being disruptive to a more permission-based marketing model, having permission to market. And it really was before its time in terms of even understanding, privacy policies and things like that, because it was written quite a while ago. But the one-to-one future, I think, is really what it's all about. It comes down to connection and relationship in marketing, in order to really have a relevant story and to resonate with people. They have to feel like they're not being just mass marketed to. So I would highly recommend that book. And then also an author that I really like, that I follow, that I read his book initially, and I follow even today on LinkedIn, and it's Avanish Kashuk. I may be completely butchering his name, but he is really a huge figure in web analytics itself. So he wrote a whole book on web analytics, and he's just a brilliant analyst. And so I really look to him and how he assesses data, just in terms of anything, in terms of even creating an infographic, to show off your case study. He has just some brilliant points about how we view data and how it's best to analyze things. And he even has custom templates and reports available for Google Analytics that you can use to really show the value of the marketing that you're doing.
I don't want to repeat the name because I feel like I might butcher it myself, but what was the name of the book?
The one that I read was Web Analytics 2.0. But he's written a lot, and he's definitely an influencer and a frequent contributor on LinkedIn as well. You know what? On the third, I will say something that's really not exactly marketing related, but it's just one of, I think, the best books I've ever read. And it does have a futuristic kind of AI component to it. And that's Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. And it's a really interesting, I guess you would classify it as speculative fiction, because he jumps in time between characters and from all the way from ancient Constantinople to the 1960s, and then the near future, and then into hundreds of years in the future when everything is computer driven, and it's a character living on a ship in outer space. So the book jumps all over between these characters and these timelines, but ultimately they're all tied together by a myth that's been retold, almost like, you know, Homer's Iliad or Odyssey kind of thing, where they all know the story of this fable, and it was passed through hundreds of years and through generations, and they're somehow all connected to that story. And it's just a brilliant work of fiction, but it also has some really interesting computer-driven AI in the futuristic parts of it,
Right.
that really, I don't want to spoil the story, but really are really interesting and come together and make sense in the end of the story. So if you're interested in kind of fiction that's really a big idea centered around a single story, I would highly recommend that.
Cloud Cuckoo Land. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And while you were explaining the premise of it, I kind of related to another story that I'm not too sure if you've heard of. It's called Cloud Atlas.
Oh yes, also on my
I
book
think,
list.
wait, on the book list to read or book list you've already read?
Yeah, it's on my book list of ones I'm waiting for from the library.
All right, right. So I think that it does follow a similar premise where you're pretty much traveling throughout time and different generations of the same kind of family.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to spoil it too, but it does get a bit complicated to, follow each person's
Follow.
story and find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I got very into it back in, I think, 2012 or so, and there was a huge infographic trying to figure everything out. So if Cloud Cuckoo Land is anything near that, I'm sold. I will probably read that book
Great.
tonight itself.
And
But now, sorry.
that same author, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say that same author had another book, um, All the Light We Cannot See, I think was the name of that one.
All the idea.
Yeah, so I think he's most known for that, and he jumps in time in that story as well. But it's a totally different setting. But I read both, and I actually think Cloud Cuckoo Land is a better story.
So I shall put it on my reading list for sure. And if our readers enjoy it too, we'll hope they comment below in our podcast section that they also took it up and they're happy about it. But let's go into the 3 podcasts that you would recommend.
Okay. I actually am not as much of a podcast listener. I have a focus issue, and not that I can't focus. I get so focused, I no longer hear like the music or the podcast. If I'm trying to do a task, I have tunnel vision and just don't even hear anything around me. So I'm not as much of a podcast listener. I tend to follow people on LinkedIn and read their transcripts instead of listening, because if I read the transcript, I'll actually catch what they're saying.
Right. So who would be your, let's say, 3, I wouldn't want to say influencers, but let's say 3 personalities who would you recommend?
Neil Patel is one that you probably have heard before in the marketing world. Yes. And then Simon Sinek. I find him he's just an interesting thinker, and tends to be opinionated, but has really interesting thoughts. And then Charlene Lee, just Li is her last name, is an also really interesting author. She's just into digital transformation as well, and has done a lot of research. She was with the Altimeter Group for a long time. She's a New York Times bestseller as well. So those are 3 that immediately come to mind.
Okay, so we'll make sure to include them in the transcript as well. But I'll kind of, if you don't mind, I'll kind of give you an answer for the 3 podcasts. SEO on Air. I think that's the only one you do need to listen to.
Okay.
If you've pretty much got that taken down, you don't really need any other podcast in Spotify. Actually, no, we're doing too much self-promotion. But we are in our, I think, last 10 to 15 minutes that I have with you. Do I have more than that, or?
Yeah, about 15, I think, is what I have.
Okay, so I don't know if we can cover the entirety of the marketing topics along with the mental health question if it's just 15 minutes. So I'll need your little help in this one. Which one do you really want to talk about? Because I can do both. I'm fine with either.
Yeah,
But
honestly,
if you're
let's
very prepared with the marketing.
let's do both. It's fine.
All
We'll fit
right.
it in.
So we spoke about AI in SEO and digital marketing. We can now get into the more traditional, well, not traditional, but the more standard version of marketing that we have now. Thank you so much for the chat, Alexandra, or can I say Alex now? I think all right, cool. I've made it to the inner circle. So thank you so much for the chat, Alex. I hope we can get maybe another chat with you a couple of months down the line. We can do part 2 to this.
Sure, I'd love to.
And if you are interested, we are trying to do a webinar type series or a roundtable talk where we have one middle topic and then have a bunch of experienced individuals give their opinion on that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are down for that, we will also try to include you.
Sure, I'd be interested in that too.
All right, cool. So again, thank you so much for the chat, and I hope you had a great time.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for watching that episode. I hope you enjoyed. For more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe.